Yeah, my wife is also a little sister.
Yeah.
And like Joanna was saying, the little sister impulse just comes out sometimes.
You know,
she'll prank me or get me
I
with
look
whatever.
at Courtney and Trey. Of course, Trey's so big. And Courtney used to grab him and manhandle him.
Yeah.
And had him saying yes ma'am and no ma'am to him.
Get out of here.
No, I'm joking. One day we heard Courtney said something to him. He said yes ma'am, and Debbie went in and she said, what did you say? He said yes ma'am. She told me I had to say
See something?
Oh God.
Wow, that's pretty good.
So that birth order always kind of remains, I watched Debbie get among her sisters, and they all kind of fit back into.
Is she the oldest?
No, she's the middle.
She's right in the middle.
Yeah.
So
she's supposed to be the one that's
peacemaker?
unstable, the middle child. But
Exactly.
she's the only one. They're all the others are unstable. She's the only stable one.
Do they watch this? Or are they going to take offense
I
to
don't
the fact
know.
that you just called them
No,
unstable?
they wouldn't take offense.
So it's just her sisters left, right? Because
Yeah.
her brother passed. Okay,
Yeah.
so she's got to be stable. She's got to stable them all.
Yeah.
Stabilize everything.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think now, so my son is right in the middle. I wonder if he'll stabilize everything. He's got two sisters on either side.
Yeah.
He'll
have to.
I guess so.
No, he looked so grown up yesterday.
Yeah, we got his hair cut. He's just
But
a.
he's also just like getting tall and thinning out. Man, I was just
It's
like,
weird.
Wow. He popped up on the screen. That's when I saw it and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness.
He was, he borderline looks too mature to be in the preschool choir yesterday. It's his very last performance in the preschool choir. He's ready to graduate.
It's funny how fast they go, because I was downstairs with somebody the other day showing them something downstairs at an off hour. And here comes Harper running through, and
Yep.
I thought, look at that child.
She's huge.
Just growing.
She's the big woman on campus too. She will get in there and take charge. Nell will talk a lot about taking charge. Harper will just do it. And you'll look up and you'll be like, how is she
gosh.
like the CEO over all of this?
That's funny.
My wife was like, she was sad for like maybe 1.5 seconds as she thought about, oh my goodness, Jude's graduating from the preschool choir, and then she realized, oh wait, Hope is graduating into the preschool choir. So we're there. Don't worry, Valleydale family.
got
There
'em
will
lined
continue
up.
to be a Bullis presence in the preschool choir for years to come. Never you worry.
Still lining them up. More to come.
More to come. Why not?
No, we're not making an announcement. Don't anybody take that as
No, I'm not sure it's a physical possibility. We yesterday was a really good day though.
It really was.
We had the Valleydale Pals with us. So,
Listen, the Lord, I am certain, I told you this last night,
Yep.
was pleased with the worship yesterday, with those students in there and the preschool in there singing, or the children's, whatever it is. I just thought, what an incredible way to open the day.
Oh, yeah, I loved it. It was a couple of years ago, a volunteer had said we should do this with the special needs people waving the palm branches, and then for some reason, and I can't really remember why, but the schedules and everything, we hadn't been able to do it in a few years.
Yeah.
And so this year it coincided with Sarah coming on, and she's done a great job. You had told me how that the PALS Life Group has gotten a lot larger.
Yeah.
Do you know that Dan's been going to
Yeah,
the life
I
group?
do.
I think that was
Sarah
so
was
wonderful.
telling me that he came in there, or that she had invited him or whatever, and that he came in there and that he really is enjoying that.
I just thought that was really, because he's older than all the rest of them. But anyway, apparently he's been a real big help in there. And so even he was up there waving the palm branches. Sarah had them all lined up, because it's a big operation to get some of those guys in and out of there. Paul's in his chair, and you gotta carry Hudson in and out of there. But they all participated.
They did a great job.
And along with anyway, so it's just that's the way it should be.
I just thought that was just so moving to me, and I thought the Lord has to be pleased with this. This has to really please the Lord.
Yeah,
I thought it was great.
The least of these,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Doing
and the
ministry.
music yesterday, oh man, it just
Oh, yeah.
was right along the path that I was going down.
I loved when you told me on, I think you told me on Monday about what your message was going to be, which, that was at least.
I really kind of hesitated. This is so unusual. It's so
Yeah.
different. It's, am I going to lose people in it? And I thank Joe for all the
Yeah.
video help, and it was great. I could not have done it. I don't think it would have made the sense that it did, if it made sense, without the pictures.
Having the visual representation
really
is
helped.
really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that idea of proclaiming his victory. Because when you said that to me, it was like a slam dunk. Dylan and I changed a couple of the songs, and then we put Christus Victor in
Did
there.
y'all rewrite those
Talking
things?
about, yeah, we didn't need to rewrite them. It was already there. See what
I
happens
thought they
when
were so great.
see what happens when you got the message done on Monday. We can have the music. I know that's 6
I
days
know,
earlier than you normally do it, but I'm just giving you a hard time.
You'd have to be.
It
Because
was-
there's no way I could do that. Just go on and bury me now.
Let's come back. We're going to come back to the message because there's so much there. But wanted to, even up top, remind people about Good Friday.
Yeah.
Coming up this Friday.
It'll be a great service.
Signing up for meal is closed, but please come. The service starts at 6:30. There's going to be plenty of places to sit and participate. And most importantly, that's our time this season to take the Lord's table together. So you want to be there for that.
We actually get to do it. The only other time we do it at night is on Christmas Eve.
Right.
And this is at night. And really the way the first church, the very early church, the New Testament church did it, was around the table. They had to stop that. Paul had, I'm going to talk, I don't know why I went down this road with it, but I wrote this over the weekend. I read a lot of the history of that. The church fathers had to stop doing the Lord's table with the meal. That was the problem they were having at Corinth.
Right.
They had an issue with it.
Right.
And they kept having issues and kept having issues and they kept trying to do it in such a way that it wouldn't be issue oriented. It really is amazing to me how God gives us something so simple,
Yeah.
and we will complicate it
Yep.
and mess it up almost every time.
Well, we do that with baptism too.
We do. It's been done with baptism.
Right. We complicate it. We mess it up. Those issues that they were having at Corinth were terrible. People approaching the table in a drunken state.
That they were drunk, they were gobbling up all the food, eating up all the food,
Right.
so that the poor people that got there.
Yeah.
Then the church went to doing just a meal for poor people,
Uh-huh.
and they made the rich people pay for it. And then they would do the Lord's table. Well, I'm going to explain all of that Wednesday night.
Oh, yeah,
What happened to
you
it?
mean Friday
How did
night,
it? I mean Friday night. How did it digress so, and what happened to it? And because
glad
the
you
church always did it around a meal, but they had to stop it because there was just too much abuse of various kinds.
Well, I like that we're still able to do that. We're able to just get close to what it was like. Can't get all the way there, but I love giving people that historical perspective. And I'm going to try to. I'm working on a surprise for you on Friday.
Oh boy!
Because I'm going to try. I'll tell you what it is now.
Chocolate?
What I'm trying to put. Is that all it takes to surprise you? Joanna, get that chocolate on my desk immediately. No, I want to try to. I'm trying to do. Sing a little bit in Hebrew after the meal to think about how the disciples went away singing a hymn. So we have the meal and then we'll kind of sing ourselves away from the meal and then think about what happened
That's
right
great.
after that.
I look forward to it. You told me a little bit that you were going to do.
Yeah, we're
that.
going to
Not
try.
the Hebrew, but the.
Yeah, we'll see.
That'll be an interesting way to do that.
We'll see about it. I pitched the idea to a couple people, and their eyebrows went so high it made me wonder if maybe we shouldn't do it. So, but if it goes poorly, I'm just going to pin it on Dylan.
Blame the.
But I've discipled him too well. Do you know what happened this past
No,
week?
what did he do?
He made this handout for the orchestra, and it was the cover page for all of their Holy Week music. There's like 10 pieces of music in there.
Oh.
And he said, I've made this all for you. Just know, if there are any issues, please email jmcgookin@valleyview.org. And I was like, I've taught you too well.
Oh, gosh. It's bad when the interns start showing you.
So
Good.
Yeah,
The
we
music
laughed
was
about
great
that.
yesterday. It really was.
Praise the Lord. I love, man, the orchestra, the horns are just, man, when we have everybody there, you know how hard it is, like some weeks, to just get everybody to come.
They
But
really do sound great.
When they lock in, man, when we've got all 6 or 7 of them, golly, I just take my
I
headphones
can't
out.
wait until we get a full orchestra and then we build a sinking stage and they come up.
That's going to be great.
They come up out of the floor.
That's
playing.
going to be great.
Oh, gosh.
That's going to be fabulous. We won't be able to build a new building, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Since we'll have spent $10 million to make that happen. You know, that's a solid concrete stage.
Is it really?
It is a concrete slab on top of some because we looked at lowering it. People are like, why is the platform so high? Well, it's a long story. But we also can't lower it because it's,
Nothing you can do to it.
well, I mean, you could. It's like Denny says, all it takes is money.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you just got to spend an inordinate amount of money to make
So it'll
it
be
work.
difficult getting that pit in there, but we're going to get that
Yeah, we're
pit.
going to do it.
We're
Listen,
going to do it.
But
We stick a couple of pieces of dynamite on that thing, and I guarantee you it'll open up.
well, I tell you what, that'll get people's attention.
Yeah.
Should we do that during the service?
I think so.
All right.
Right at the end, right as I give the invitation.
Sounds good.
I guarantee you they'll walk the aisles at that point.
Well, they might be walking to the door if there's dynamite at the front. Just put dynamite at the back too, and just see where they choose to go. I'll just sync it up with the 1812 overture. That's what. You know that originally had literal cannons firing.
Yes, I do.
In it. Okay, I know. I
My
figured you
music
knew that.
teacher in grammar school taught us that. You
Really?
remember you used to have, did y'all have music when you came along?
Yeah, it was
We
still
did.
there.
We had a music class, in grammar school that
Yeah.
we would all go, and she taught us stuff like that.
I recently, it's the power of social media. I found my 3rd grade music teacher, Mrs.
you really?
Mrs. Fritz, and I just sent her a message. I was like, I still sing some of those songs you taught us, like, in the shower, or they'll be in my head, and I was like, just thank you. 'cause
Frog
that-
went a-courting and did he ride?
I
Did you
don't
sing
think we
that?
did.
You didn't? You never sang?
It was a
Well,
lot
you've
of
never lived until you.
it was a lot of Hi Ho the Dario, which I can't even remember
We had
half
a
of now.
music
Hi
teacher who
Ho the
loved that.
Dario.
Froggy went a-riding. Went
You wanna
a-courting
sing it
and
right
did he
now?
ride. No. I do
Jared
not.
can turn it into a movie trailer for you if you want to sing
No.
like you.
Question for you. Yesterday, I used the term Johnny One Note.
Johnny
Yeah.
One Note, yeah.
What is that from? Because a lot of people were like, what? And I said, I mean, it's from somewhere.
I don't know what it's from. Johnny One Note. There's a lot.
It's from some mafia movie.
Is it really?
I think so,
I definitely didn't know that.
but I don't remember that either.
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, I've heard the phrase, but
Johnny
I can't
One
tell you
Note.
where it came
Because
from.
we had this one harmony in Power of the Cross. It was just one note for like
Yeah.
a few measures. And so Joanna was saying that to remind them. And they're like, what are you talking
Italian movie, Johnny One Note. You know what I'm talking
That's not bad.
You know what I'm talking
Jared, you need to isolate that. when Pastor does, it comes to my daughter's wedding.
I love that scene here's the Godfather sitting there, and there's the funeral director begging him,
Yeah.
go kill these guys that beat his daughter up. He said, "You never bothered to make me your friend." And I'm thinking, "Oh, come on!
You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. And yeah.
You never bothered to have me over for coffee."
Well, speaking of the Godfather, let's look at Mark chapter 15.
What a segue.
Speaking of God the Father and him applying his wrath to his son.
yeah.
Did I say John chapter 15? I meant Mark. Did I
Mark.
say Mark? I'm having some trouble. recently.
You know, I know I said this in one service, I didn't in the other. This guy is John Mark. He's mentioned, he's
That's
called
right.
that twice in Acts 12 and once in, I think, Acts 15, I'm thinking. John was the Hebrew name.
Correct.
Mark is the Latin.
Mm-hmm.
Our guide in Italy was Marco. And there's the cathedral, the San Marco Cathedral in San Marco Square in Venice. So Mark was the Roman name that he went by.
And we can review, thinking about this gospel as a whole, tradition tells us that Mark put this together largely based on the preaching of Peter.
Yes.
And then you said this very specifically yesterday, this gospel was written for the Roman audience.
Yeah, for a Gentile audience, but specifically for the Romans.
And
for those that lived in Rome. When you say Romans, you always think of soldiers.
Understood.
But, for all of those that lived in Rome.
The Roman culture heavily prioritized, in terms of like storytelling or in terms of giving respect, they heavily prioritized action over word.
Yeah.
Your actions, in this case, are literally speaking louder than your words, which then leads to his use of immediately. It's all action.
Yeah. It's all, that's his, this would make a good film script right here, because there is less dialogue, which I'm not saying that's better. I'm just saying that's the way Mark did it. It was less dialogue and more recounting of the actions that took place.
And then specifically, well, and we
because that's what appealed to the Romans.
And we should say that in specific contrast to the Gospel of Matthew.
Or Luke or John.
And Matthew is at least twice as long.
Yeah. And Matthew and Luke, most scholars say used Mark because Mark was the first gospel, and they used this as a template to go by. And so you call them synoptic, which means basically to see, to scope. Synoptic comes from the Greek, and it means to scope. They all see together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit before, and I actually got it back out this week as I'm prepping for Good Friday. The Harmony of the Gospels. Mm-hmm. That's a really helpful volume.
It is a good book.
Like you have the 4 columns, and you see where each of the Gospels. And sometimes it's a little, generally they follow the pattern of Mark.
Right.
But sometimes that means you have to pull in stuff that's out of order in the other Gospels.
Yeah.
Just because the stories are told
they don't all
editorially.
do it chronologically. They do it more thematically.
That's an important thing. We have those sections, like some scholars theorize that, the Sermon on the Mount was actually a collection of other messages.
Right.
And then certainly, and I don't know about that one, but certainly like we have those long sections of parables, especially in Matthew. Like, well, it's probably likely that he didn't tell all of those just straight in order that way.
Yeah.
But with Mark, it's so much closer to kind of a bare bones presentation.
Right.
You can feel pretty confident that this is the chronology.
Yeah, and John's gospel moves
Chronologically.
pretty much chronologically.
Yes.
He did that so much later than these other guys. He did it probably in the.
You mean he wrote it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was another 30 years later,
at
right?
least somewhere around in there, in the early 90s. Or late 80s, somewhere right in there.
Yeah, because John was the lone survivor of the apostles. Was he the only one to die eventually of natural causes?
He was. Although they
tried to kill him.
They tried to kill him a number of times. But he made it.
He even kind of
died.
It's interesting, he even kind of talks about that at the end of John 21, right? Like, what difference does it make how this man will die? Speaking of himself there, because Peter and the others were all martyred.
Yeah.
That's real. Man, well, we could talk about that for a long time. We got to get to the Mark 15. How do you get me off like this? How do you get me off the topic?
You seem to do a good job of that.
I love it when you...
I don't have to work too hard at it.
So you got Mark 15. Now so the crux of this message was, and you said it was more teaching than preaching, is that historically, archaeologically speaking, we know for a fact that when the Romans when they would crown a new Caesar, there was a liturgical order of events for that Caesar to be crowned, right? The work of the people. They're doing this thing. It's a tradition. It's a ceremony.
Yeah.
And you showed us how with 7 points, I might add.
Yeah.
7 points. 7 sub points. How all of what Mark outlines with the crucifixion is it overlays perfectly
Yeah.
on that ceremony.
It's kind of interesting, and there was a paper done on this in the New Testament Theological Journal years ago, and I can't remember. I think it was either back in the 60s or 50s, or I tried to access it, but I would have had to have rejoined. I did it when I was working on my PhD, and then I let it go because I'm not researching journals anymore.
Right.
But
They make that stuff
it's-
expensive too.
Oh, it's crazy,
Yeah.
you know, and you get locked into it, you can't get out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, and a lot of guys have taken off on that. One of those happened to be Robert Gundry, who
Oh, yeah.
did, years ago, I had I bought his Introduction to the New Testament, and it was extremely well done, and so he did a commentary on Mark. It's in 2 volumes. It's now available only in paperback, I think.
Oh, okay.
And in that, it's a very detailed commentary. The 2 volumes are, and he goes through a good bit of this as well. So I stumbled across this like a month ago, and I started reading, and I started looking at this, and I started fiddling with it. And I did this to an extent when I had my group in Rome, had them sit down on the steps. We came from the Capitolina, and we walked backwards. In my opinion, we came backwards through the Forum, and there were some steps up there by the old Hall of Justice. And they sat down there, and I kind of went there, and I was able to point back up the Via Sacra and point back up toward where the Temple of Jupiter stood, and talked about all of this.
And you're talking
And
about.
I thought, do I do this? Do I not do it? Is it too difficult? Is it too? Are people going to be able to keep up with it?
So are there? Well, I'm glad that you did it. One question I had was because you're talking about the triumphal march. You have the Roman triumphal march and how the passion of the Christ and
Right.
the march that he does through different things. It overlays. Are there scholars that dispute this?
Oh yeah,
That say that he's not doing this?
Kirkwood, you've been in church work long enough to
Yeah.
know there's somebody out there that's going to gripe about everything, anything,
do.
that comes up. And yes, there are those that say, no, you're misreading Mark. You're just, to me, it's too obvious. You don't get 7 things like this, just one after the other after the
Yeah.
other. Chance is too great.
Yeah.
The odds are too great over that. And to me, it makes sense if Mark is writing this to the Roman church who feel like, the Romans have defeated the land of Jehovah.
Mm-hmm.
They've defeated the people of God. They've defeated Jesus. They took him, the government of Rome took him and crucified him. Basically, so is Rome more powerful than our God? And I think what Mark was showing here is in no way. In fact, this is the way God works. He takes the implement of death and he brings victory out of it. And I think that was what I wanted people to grasp. And if God can do that with the implement of death, he can overcome and triumph over the difficulties and the struggles that we have.
There were 2 things that really sealed the deal for me with believing that this was intentional by Mark. And one I'd actually heard before, but I'd forgotten, and that was the use of the crown of thorns.
Right.
Because that was then used in contrast to what kind of leaves is it? The crown?
The laurel leaves.
The laurel leaves that they used to crown Caesar. He didn't have a crown that we think of King Charles wearing. It was this laurel leaves as he's presented as the new Caesar.
Yeah.
Laurel, soft, supple, beautiful leaves.
Yeah, evergreen,
Well said. In contrast to the thorns. It's a symbol of sin. It's a symbol of just frustration.
Right.
And it's a symbol of pain.
Yes.
And yet they put that on his head specifically to mock him. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing. And anything else you want to say there? I don't want to cut you off. Mm-mm. Then the other thing that really, really got my attention, Pastor, was the refusal. Yeah. When he refuses the wine on the cross.
Right.
Talk about that spot in the triumphal ceremony.
Well, they get to the steps of the Temple of Jupiter, and there is an altar there that they're going to offer that bull up as a sacrifice. We don't really know what he was doing when he did this because it's just not recorded anywhere.
Okay.
But we do know that they gave him a goblet of wine and he poured it out. He refused to drink it. We know. I speculated what it meant. Maybe it was maybe he poured it out on that altar as an offering.
It's
maybe
like a drink offering.
Yeah,
kind of
and
thing.
maybe he poured it out to symbolize this is my life. I'll pour my life out for you. Maybe he poured it out. I don't know. I don't know why. Other than those two things, I
Could
would
there
not.
have been like a component of ancestral worship there, maybe?
Any bizarre thing, they would have worshipped. Anything like that,
Sure.
yes. But the same thing is when Jesus gets to
Yes.
Golgotha, they tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, and I said, that's a narcotic. It would basically make you kind of fuzzy and hazy and,
Temporarily numb the pain.
yeah, that kind of deal. It's kind of like when you go to have some medical procedures, they'll give you a Valium ahead of time, or they'll give you Demerol or something like that just kind of makes you numb. You don't care where you are. I had some finger surgery. Here, I have had several hand surgeries.
Oh, gosh.
And, they just take you in that morning, kind of knock you out for 10 minutes or whatever, and then give you something. I can't
Yeah.
take codeine. So I've had this or I've had that, and it just kind of makes you feel like I just don't care where I am.
Yeah.
So that's what they were trying to do.
And so it seemed like you were saying that this was a normal practice. They would do
yes,
this to other
yes,
Okay.
yeah. They gave this to a lot of those that they would crucify.
Interesting.
In order to make it easier for them to get them down on the cross and crucified.
So, and their thinking is this will wear off while they're still on the cross. They'll still receive
yeah,
the pain
yeah.
and the suffering.
Yeah, because most victims would last a day. They
Right.
would last 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's why they were so surprised that Jesus had died so early.
Yeah, Scripture records, I think it's the end of
Yeah.
Matthew, that Pilate is surprised
Yeah.
that he passed away in
And
just
so
a
he
few
calls
hours.
for the centurion to come. And the centurion has to go and attest to the fact, yes, he's dead.
Yeah, and that comes with the spear as well. So Jesus refuses the myrrh. So this is Christ on the cross, the crowned king, and he also goes through and refuses the wine, just like Caesar does. And maybe the biggest contrast in the ceremony is they don't sacrifice a bull, but the king himself is the sacrifice.
There's so many things in there that you can do like that. And running through my mind was
Yeah.
that same thought, do I throw that in? But by the second service, I thought, I've got to cut this down, although I finished at the exact same place.
Yeah.
On the time clock, 3 minutes after.
Oh, that's
After
funny.
my time had given out. I think, too, the statement, the King of the Jews, the chief priests argue with him about that.
Yeah.
Don't put that up
With
there.
Pilate, right.
And then they say, well, okay, if you're going to put up there, he said he is.
And Pilate says,
What is written is written.
I've written what I've written, yep.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then you had up there like that's actually in the text, I think it's verse 28, like the prophecy was fulfilled, that he was numbered among the transgressors, he's in between. And that was another one, I forgot about this, but this was just a really helpful understanding, like the fact, just even the new Caesar, what I'm trying to say is the new Caesar, he has two witnesses, one to either side of him, that testify of his lordship.
Well, that's just like with the swearing in of a new president. When they swore Trump in, Biden is there.
Right.
Attesting to
The transition of power.
the transition here. And you've got, other presidents that are there, and they're all kind of saying, we recognize this transition of power. Well, that's what they were doing, these two noble people. I think when Vespasian was proclaimed Caesar, that his two sons, I think, they could have, and that would have represented the nobility. That begins the Flavian dynasty. There's only 3 in that, he and his 2 sons. But they have 2 noblemen stand up there as if to say, the Senate, the nobility of Rome all recognizes this.
You talked about how the thieves then, one thief specifically recognizes that he is Lord.
Yes.
And then what I wrote down, I don't know what you think about this, but just that the other thief, in a sense, also proves his lordship by proving the necessity of his dying, right? That he's on the cross and he still holds on to his sin unto death.
Yeah.
Both of them in some way are like proclaiming that this is the Christ and this is the way it should be. But no one perhaps proclaims it with as much weight as the centurion. And and your insight into that, I had just never
there is this
before.
contrast between the religious leaders who say, come down off that cross and we'll believe.
Right.
And this guy who's so acquainted with death says, no, he stayed on that cross, and the way he died, I believe. That's faith.
Yes.
He puts his faith in him. Even though he died, he pronounces his faith. And I can't remember. The guy has legend. Licinius.
I was going to say John Wayne, but yeah.
Hey, he was man in the greatest story ever done. I started to show that clip, and say, do you recognize that voice? We know who that centurion is. It was John Wayne.
I knew you'd love that. Well, so the thing that I didn't understand about the centurion, again, just not digging into it enough. I just figured he was standing by. He's trying to keep people away from the cross, whatever. But no, you gave us the insight that this is the guy that is the most experienced with crucifixion. He's presiding over these killing squads. Mm-hmm. He's the one that just drove the nails in, essentially.
Well, he would have stood there and watched because he was put there in charge. He represented the emperor, basically. He represented, just like an ambassador represents the president in the United States, wherever he is. That's how important these centurions were. They were the backbone of the Roman army. Mm-hmm. They were over at least 100 men. Sometimes they were over more than that. He probably was over a cohort. He may have been the centurion that was over this entire cohort, which would have been 600 men. And he's the guy that goes out there and makes sure all this stuff is done just exactly, that there are no mess-ups, no slip-ups, no. And that's why Pilate calls him back and says, is this true? Is he really dead? I've just gotten a report. How can that happen in 6 hours, And he says, yeah, he died.
The point is, he's not like an impartial voice. He's not showing up to this late. And you said this, and I'm completely aligned with you. Like, if only we could understand what he saw in the death of Christ that made him proclaim that.
It says, saw the way he breathed his last, and he said, truly, this man was the Son of God.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting to think about. But either way, he did. And so then it's an obvious gospel call. Like, you're seeing this in the text, will you respond?
Well, that blows the theory of the swoon theory that says,
goodness.
Jesus just swooned, he passed out on the cross, they thought he was dead. If that had happened, they would have cut this guy's head off. They would have probably crucified that centurion.
Yeah, because he didn't do his
job. If he'd gone back
job.
and told Pilate, yeah, he's dead, and they get him off the cross and he kind of comes to, they would have probably crucified that guy or cut his head off, or they would have put him to death some kind of way.
He didn't do his job,
yeah.
And then he lied about it. Yeah, of course.
You better, if you worked for Rome, you better do your job.
Or else. That's the way it is.
It's the way the family works.
That's a good ending. Well, we did a good job, Pat, because you were tired at the beginning of this, but then we gave you some new energy.
You did.
We just nothing like talking about God's word.
It's always a pick-me-up to come back here to the
We love it. Sweet. We love it. Yep. We've had a great time. Yes. That was
it blows me up.
The business meeting last night with Pat. They have it. Then I assume that this was Dave that did this.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave was having a little fun with you, and Pastor came up to do his closing word, and then it was just the big picture of you as the inflatable
I
thing.
hope I'm not that fat.
You are definitely not, Pastor. It's just a joke. It's one of those. And
I know.
listen,
It
if
was
you get
funny.
if you get discouraged by it, just remember, it was all Jared's idea. It was completely him. We had nothing to do with it. He'll take the blame. Hey, he's got a killer.
He's got my suit down, the suit that I had on.
Well, that
is
would
that
yeah.
British suit that I
Yeah, that is a
picked
good
up
one.
in Windsor.
He's got a killer video for us for Easter Sunday. I'm
Oh,
really
really?
excited about it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
we're doing a poem with a chiastic structure.
Oh, well, that'll be neat.
You're gonna love it. And if you
Did
don't,
you really?
No.
Oh,
that was well, it was me repurposing somebody else's work. So if you guys want to know what a chiasm is, you need to make sure you're there very early on Easter Sunday, because it'll be basically the first thing.
you stumble across those things in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Not infrequently, not frequently, but not infrequently. And they do that for a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're definitely doing it for a purpose as well. All right, we're going to close up shop. We got meetings to get to. It's our
Oh,
last week of the 21 days of prayer.
That's right. That's at 11.
11 o'clock. Say goodbye, Pastor.
Goodbye, Pastor. You're going to hit an age where that's going to become a real job for you to do.
I just keep doing it every day.
Well, yeah, Jack
Use it or lose
LaLanne.
it.
You don't even know who Jack LaLanne is.
Oh, yeah.
As a kid, I used to.
He was
Mom
a fitness
had-